Chapter 1. The 10-second panic. The one you lost. What if the reason you can't move on isn't love, but timing? What if the person you still think about at 2 a.m. wasn't the one, but the almost? The one you met too early or too late? The one you lost, not because you didn't love each other, but because life refused to cooperate. And deep down, what hurts most isn't the breakup. It's the humiliating thought. If we had met at a different time, would it have worked? That question lingers like a wound that never closes. Chapter 2. The kind of love you can't talk about. There's something uniquely painful about wrong timing love. You can't even explain it properly to your friends. Because technically, nothing dramatic happened. No betrayal, no screaming match, no scandal, just bad timing. Maybe you were both broke and unstable. Maybe one of you was moving abroad. Maybe one of you wasn't emotionally ready. Maybe you were healing from someone else. So when it ended, people said, it just wasn't meant to be. But that doesn't help, because it felt meant to be. That's the problem. And now you carry this secret humiliation, the knowledge that you had something rare in your hands and couldn't keep it. You don't talk about it because it sounds pathetic. I met the right person at the wrong time. It almost sounds like an excuse. But inside, it doesn't feel like an excuse. It feels like unfinished business. Chapter 3. The psychology of the unfinished. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to remember unfinished experiences more vividly than completed ones. An incomplete story sticks in the brain. A door left slightly open demands attention. Wrong timing. Love is exactly that, an unfinished sentence. There was no clear ending, no final betrayal to hate them for. No dramatic collapse to justify letting go. Just potential. And potential is dangerous, because potential doesn't die easily. It keeps whispering, what if? What if you had been more patient? What if they had tried harder? What if life had slowed down for just 1 year? Unlike toxic love, which eventually turns sour in your memory, wrong timing love stays pure, untested, unruined, untouched by reality, and that purity makes it unforgettable. Chapter 4. The ego wound no one admits. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes what hurts isn't just the love, it's the ego. You met someone who saw you, really saw you. They admired your mind. They understood your silences. They made you feel chosen. And then they let you go. Not because you weren't good enough, but because the timing wasn't right. And that's even worse, because there's no villain. You can't tell yourself, they didn't value me. They did. They just couldn't stay. So now you're left with this unbearable thought. I was enough, but not enough to fight for. That gray area bruises the ego in a way rejection never could. Rejection gives closure. Wrong timing gives doubt. Chapter 5. The jealousy that feels shameful. Then comes the part you never admit out loud. They move on. Maybe months later, maybe years. And suddenly, the timing works for them. They're stable now, emotionally available, ready for commitment with someone else. That's when the jealousy turns bitter. You don't just miss them, you resent the universe. Why couldn't they be ready with me? Why did I get the unfinished version? You scroll through their photos and feel that humiliating mix of anger and longing. You tell yourself you're mature. You tell yourself you wish them happiness. But in the dark, a quieter voice whispers, that was supposed to be me. And that voice feels ugly. But it's human. Chapter 6. Romanticizing the almost there's another reason wrong timing love becomes unforgettable. It never had the chance to disappoint you. Long-term relationships expose flaws, habits, irritations. incompatibilities. But almost love freezes people in their best light. They remain charming, kind, full of possibility. You never saw how they handle stress for years. You never saw how they argue after 5 fights. You never saw how ordinary things become. So in your mind, they stay extraordinary. As Emma Scott Fitzgerald wrote in The Great Gatsby, there are all kinds of love in this world, but never the same love twice. Wrong timing. Love feels like that one rare version, irreplaceable and suspended in time. But maybe it feels unique because it never had to survive reality. Chapter 7. The Fear of Scarcity. Sometimes, what makes it unforgettable isn't just the person. It's the fear. The fear that you won't meet someone like that again. When you experience a connection that feels effortless, the same humor, the same rhythm, the same emotional wavelength, your brain labels it as rare. And when you lose something rare, your mind panics. What if that was my only chance? What if I missed my window? What if I'm always just a little too early or too late? This is where insecurity creeps in. You compare yourself to their new partner. You question your worth. You replay old conversations, analyzing every word, not because you're obsessed with them, but because you're afraid of scarcity. Afraid that love is limited. Afraid that timing is fate. Afraid that you were almost chosen, and that almost is the closest you'll ever get. Chapter 8. The Addiction to Intensity. Let's be honest. Wrong timing. Love is often intense. It burns fast. It feels urgent. It feels like something that has to happen now, even though it can't. And intensity creates memory. Calm love feels safe, but chaotic love feels cinematic. You remember the late-night confessions, the dramatic goodbyes, the "if things were different" conversations. You remember the tears, the promises, the timing that never aligned. Your nervous system doesn't easily forget high emotional peaks. And sometimes you mistake intensity for destiny. But intensity isn't always compatibility. Sometimes it's just two people colliding at the wrong moment, and the impact leaves a mark. Chapter 9. The Hardest Truth. Here's the truth most people avoid. Sometimes wrong timing is a softer way of saying, we weren't ready. Not ready for commitment. Not ready for sacrifice. Not ready to grow at the same pace. Timing isn't separate from who we are. Timing is who we are at that moment. If someone couldn't stay, maybe it wasn't just the calendar. Maybe it was capacity. And that realization hurts, because it means the story wasn't stolen from you by fate. It simply couldn't exist in that version of you, or them. Chapter 10. Why it stays with you. So why does wrong timing make love unforgettable? Because it combines unfinished potential, bruised ego, romanticized memory, fear of scarcity, emotional intensity, and unanswered what-ifs. It doesn't end cleanly. It lingers. But here's something rarely said. The fact that it didn't work out doesn't mean it was your only chance at something deep. It only means two versions of yourselves met, and those versions couldn't align. Love is not just about meeting the right person. It's about meeting them as the right versions of yourselves. And sometimes, the unforgettable ones aren't the ones we were meant to build a life with. They're the ones who taught us what we're capable of feeling. They show us our depth, our vulnerability, our longing. They don't stay, but they change us. And maybe that's why we remember them. Not because they were destiny, but because they were a mirror. If you've ever lost someone to timing, you're not weak. You're human. You loved. You hoped. You imagined a future that never came. And that grief, quiet and private, deserves acknowledgement. Maybe one day you'll meet someone at the right time. And it won't feel dramatic. It won't feel cinematic. It won't burn. It will feel steady. And maybe that steadiness won't feel unforgettable, but it might feel safe. And sometimes, safe is what actually lasts. What did you think of this video? If this video resonated with you, consider subscribing and take a look at what we're exploring next.